Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. Today's guest is none other than the former PPC candidate, Mark, better known as CanadaPoli. How's it going, Mark?
Good, man. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Man, 2019 seems a long time ago. It's pretty crazy. Like it's been 5 years and it's only gotten worse. In 2018. So I'm Mark. I run an hour-long political podcast. I look every day. About 30 or 40 minutes of it is free, and then the rest is for paid subscribers. And you can check it out at CanadaPoli.com. And I'm on YouTube again because they took my YouTube channel 4 years ago and just gave it back to me last week. I'm on Spotify, and you can do it privately through my website if you're interested. And I genuinely, honestly go through the Canadian news for the day and stuff that's worldwide as well, and how it applies to Canada. And I try and update my users. And it's mainly like the reason I started doing it in 2018 was there were a bunch of people. I like podcasts. I like listening to things. And so there's a bunch of people, truckers, a whole bunch of people who can't spend the same amount of time kind of curating what's going on. And so they want a very, very kind of succinct summation of what's going on. And that's what I do. And most of the time, and I try not to tell my audience lies. And if I do screw something up, I come back and I fix it. I'm like, oh, I messed that up, right? I misunderstood. I didn't get this part. But oftentimes I'm very skeptical. And so like when the government says, well, the reason they took my YouTube channel is because I kept saying that they didn't have enough data to say that this was a safe and effective whatever. They didn't have enough time. There's no possible way that they could have the data that they're saying, because it's like baking a cake. If you have the liquid cake stuff and you put it in the oven and it's at 400 the oven, and then you take it out after 4 minutes, that's not a cake, right? And they're like, you can't say that about this, Mark. You can't say that. You're violating our community standards. So they took my monetization, my channel, everything. They said, you're a terrible, awful person. And then 2 weeks ago, one of my fans was saying, hey, like Corbett got his channel back. You want to check and see if your channel can come back? And I was like, I don't think so. So I sent the most aggressive message to YouTube I could possibly think of, like, F you assholes, like, blah, 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 blah. Give me my channel back. You stole it from me. Not expecting to hear back at all. Cause like they burned that bridge. I don't care. Right. Like I'm monetized without them. I don't need them. And so I was shit shocked the next morning. Like I went to bed after hitting send. Like it wasn't even, I didn't check afterwards because, you appeal YouTube strikes or whatever, and you check 5 minutes later and they've already denied it. Right. So I was like, I don't even care. I went to bed. Next morning, I woke up with 5 or 6 emails saying that certain videos couldn't be monetized, but my new channel is not monetized. Only my old channel was. And I thought, now I've pissed off the YouTube people by being aggressive by sending this thing in. And they've taken my other channel, but no, I looked further and I was like, oh, they gave it back to me even after I was being a jerk to them. So it's crazy, but I don't feel like we're entering now 5 years later from all of this to an end of this. Trudeau's gone, but it seems like we're on the cusp of the 2030 world being unleashed on us, like digital IDs, central bank digital currencies. All of that stuff is just waiting in the wings, and they need an event just like COVID to say it's go time. And the reason they need an event like COVID is because they need our consent. If we say not going to happen, then they can't do it. They ran out of public consent during COVID. A good example is during COVID, they were going to stop the playgrounds. They were going to tape up the playgrounds and tie up the swings and everything like that. And as soon as they made that announcement, everybody in Ontario, I don't know about the rest of Canada, but pretty much everybody in Ontario, and if it was in Ontario, I think it was an Ontario thing only, was willing to be arrested for making sure the kids could continue to access the swings in the parks and things like that. And so once the government goes that far and people just don't care anymore, they lose control. And so they had to back that off. And they're waiting for something that people believe in that they can use, and they'll manufacture it, that they can use to say, look, we need to crack down on the alt-right. We need to crack down on internet speech. We need to crack down on this and all that. And I don't know what the game is with giving me my YouTube channel back, but I feel like it's part of a trap. I don't feel like they're giving it back to me as an apology or as a, whoops, we made a mistake and blah, blah, blah. They're not giving it back to me for that. They're giving it back to me to somehow play me, go back in time and say, oh, in episode 300, you said this, and oh, that's bad, right? So
would you say the trust and faith is gone?
Oh, it's worse than gone. Like it is. I think our elections are rigged, and I ran an election in 2019, and since then, Since then, 2020 happened in the United States, and all of our rigged elections here. And I
Okay,
cannot.
wait. Let's slow it down. First,
Sure.
tell the audience, what made you decide to run? What were you doing before? What made you decide to run? What was your experience? And then we'll go to the election fraud.
Yeah, fair. So in 2018, my friend and I were hanging out and just talking about things. My friend used to be a landlord. He's a guy who's well connected and makes money and has companies and things like that. So we were just chatting about the direction things are going. I was like, it feels free, but not really. I was like, we could jump on a plane tomorrow and go anywhere in the world we want to go, et cetera, but we're not really leaving the system. You know what I mean? Like the system is kind of encapsulating us. And the system is weird. In 2018, things were already happening with the gender ideology. Soji has been almost running for 10 years. And we were kind of in the wrong direction. And I was talking with my friend saying, like, do you think there's a way that we can fix it? Or are we too far gone? Is everything just screwed and like better to get out than spend time trying to fix it here because you're not going to fix it? And we both kind of came to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe, but it would require a lot of work and a lot of a whole different approach, because what we're doing is obviously incorrect. And then Maxime Bernier kind of came onto the scene with him. And I mean, I was watching because I was doing my show at the time, and he came in and said, the conservatives are intellectually corrupt and morally corrupt party. And I was like, yeah, they are. They definitely are. So I had this belief that if the people understood how bad things were, that they would vote to save themselves, vote for, like, finally somebody can see the problems and they're addressing the issues. And I really still believe that, but I think that the censorship is such, and the wedge issues they use are so good. And also the elections are rigged independent of the press. The press is designed to sell us a story. The elections are completely separate. They don't need the press. They can do whatever they want with the elections. The reason they need the press is to sell us a story we believe. Because if we don't believe them, then we'll rise up. But if we do believe them, then you've got a wedge.
It's like taxes. Like, they don't need to tax us. They can just inflate the money supply. But
Yes.
if they do that, then people start to understand what's going on. It's the same thing with stealing elections. You need the press to kind of lubricate it.
Yep. Yes. And the taxes, paying taxes, it is meant to have you feel like you're participating in the system that you're not actually participating in. They don't need you. They just want you to feel like you have a stake in it, exactly like you're saying. And so, we're going to take your money and give it to Ukraine. Right. And then that's it. You can't do anything about it.
So let's go back to one thing you said. And I noticed this in the elections as well. I naively thought that I could go in there and I could talk to the people in the debates and explain our position, and they'll listen to me reasonably, rationally.
Yep.
But they've already made up their mind because the media has been telling them what to think for the last 4 years.
Yeah. And if you say so, like, we're in a situation where they've almost poisoned the well of the truth. So if you say, listen, that man can't be a woman because biologically that man's a man, all of a sudden 50% of the 35 plus white women with purple hair will get very offended at you, right? Like, very upset. Oh my God, you can't say that in here. This is a school. And like, that's factual. That's biologically straight up, absolutely where we should be taking this conversation, not to what these men feel like or anything like that. But the propaganda is, and so in 2019, I had some guys, a guy and a girl who lived in China, and they took me out for lunch. They were like, listen, come out for a Chinese buffet with us. We'll pay. We just want to tell you about China and the propaganda in China. And basically the propaganda in China has a little bit of truth in it. And so when you start telling people who have been taken by the propaganda in China the truth, all of a sudden, all those truthful things you tell them, that man can't be a woman. Now that's a trigger for their propaganda to kick in, for their brainwashing to kick in and say, like, well, hold on, this guy's an alt-right guy. This guy is a guy who's not on board with what we're doing, right? And so it's the poison pill in the propaganda makes it very, very difficult for anybody to do what you're saying, go up and tell people the truth, because right away you're outing yourself as somebody who's not in the cult. And I think our entire society right now is in a big cult.
I'll give you an example. You said, I don't know what phrase you use, poison pill or whatever. what a man or a woman does in their bedroom is their choice. What someone does with their body is their choice. So if you go in and you say a man can't be a woman, it violates that argument that these are really compelling arguments, right? Because you're being compassionate and property
yeah,
rights.
but you can't argue your, like, if the same argument doesn't apply to age, you know what I mean? The same argument doesn't apply to the number of limbs you have, right? I identify as a 9-limbed person, right? And like, well, I want to self-actualize. So my self-actualization is that I'm 9-limbed. So what? You saying that I can't self-actualize, it prevents me from being a 9-limbed person. Well, you're not a 9-limbed person, Mark. You're a 4-limbed person. You've got 2 arms and 2 legs, man. Like, that's that. You're not that weird Spider-Man with all the arms sticking out. You're not. You're just not. Just like that guy's not a man.
I agree with you. But the thing is, the way that they brainwash these people is they say to them, we're not hurting anybody.
Yes.
Well, what's wrong if somebody identifies as a salt shaker? What do you care? Right. And then when Mark comes along and says, you're not salt, you're not pepper, that's when they call you alt-right and extremist.
Yeah. But it's made to identify the people. So it's the same kind of function as in a cult, right? Like, if you have a cult person and they have a family, you separate them from their family and you use brainwashing tactics. I guess that's the only real term I can come up with, to use the brainwashing tactics to make sure that if they hear from their family, they hear that the family doesn't like them. They hear that the family is, that they're trying to introduce things that the cult says are not okay. You know what I mean? So the cult drives a wedge between the sane people and people who believe in what the cult believes in. And I think that we're seeing that en masse in Canada at this point in time. And like, it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't matter what kind of evidence you bring to somebody. Like, I don't think that a grandmother or a grandfather wants to sentence their grandchildren to never being able to afford a house, right? But when you put it in that frame, they will say, we'll do anything we can possible to make sure that it happens, right? And so within that, we'll do anything possible. Now, in the shorter frame, Pierre Poilievre's dangerous. He threatens your grandchildren. And if you give him a chance, he's going to make life for your grandchildren that much worse. And so the Liberals are able to, you and I, take a broader scope and say, this is bad and it's going to be even worse in 20 years. And the people who are using brainwashing tactics zoom in and say, within this context, you have to, in order to protect your grandchildren, because that's the thing that's important for argument's sake, you have to vote the way we want you to vote. And then they fall in line. And so, like, we are censored, you and I, and people who speak these truths are censored. They only hear one thing, and they hear, here's the thing that you're worried about. This is how to fix it. And it pushes it liberal. But again, it's just to sell a story that's believable. It's not actual, even close to reality. They're just selling whatever they'll say anything at all to get their way.
Before I comment on that, if anyone in the audience has any questions for Mark, just put it and I'll read it out. When the Green Slush Fund scandal happened in October, up until when they brought Carney, there was almost some semblance of objectivity in the press. So if you remember this, there was a CBC or CTV journalist, reporter, investigator, whatever, that interviewed Jagmeet Singh, and she held his feet to the fire. Like, he said, these Liberals have gone too far, and she goes, yeah, but you're the one that's propping him up. That
was Vasi Kapoulis, right?
I don't know the names, but yeah, it was somebody that actually did her job. And then the moment they brought Carney in, well, yeah, but I mean, by Canadian media standards,
they did the job. So again, it's a play on the citizens. So the citizens were losing faith in the media. Justin Trudeau has bought the media. The media is still bought by Mark Carney. So they were losing faith. We were losing. I don't have any faith in the media. I show the media and I'm like, these freaking liars every single day, because they're liars. And so, but the general public, the normies, were losing faith in the media. And so to get them back on board, they needed to look tough, right? And so they get Vasi Kapoulis to go after Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh's gone, and they knew he was going to be gone anyway. They'd already ridden that donkey as far as they could. And so, excuse me. So they go after him. He's almost a sacrificial lamb. He's a millionaire now, and he's like, his pension is going to pay out millions of dollars. And he's got police protection, and he's being used now outside of politics because he's still an asset. The Canadian public think if they're outside of politics, that's that. Rutte was run out of the Netherlands, Holland, by the farmers because he was trying to bring in the 2030 agenda. He's now the UN. He's the head of the UN or head of NATO. He's the head of NATO, right? And so Justin Trudeau is going to be moved on. Jagmeet Singh is being used by the Khalistanis to further their fight with Modi. They're saying that Modi is targeting Jagmeet Singh for assassination on Canadian soil, police protection, RCMP, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole story there, and they're using him. Nenshi is the same. They put them in. Nenshi's now the NDP leader in Alberta, but until he was the NDP leader, he left he left his position as the mayor, and then he moved into university. He was paid in the university until he took over the NDP. So they've got all these institutions set up. These people are assets. We, our side, the sane people, we don't have assets. We have people who stand up and say this far and no further, and then the government throws them in jail, Coots 4, and then the government denies them bail to Marolich, and then they take their truck, Chris Barber, right? So we don't have leaders that we can rely on and use as assets. We have people who identify themselves, and the government crushes. Our mistake.
I also noticed that in watching the Liberal candidate in my riding, in the way he operated, like he's not catering to the voters. Like he knows which direction the political winds are blowing. He knows which side his bread is buttered on. So that's the way he operated.
He doesn't work for the voters, and he knows it.
Kakar Ram, I will ask your question, but first I wanted you to talk to me about you said election fraud and how in Canada and how you tied it to the US in 2020.
Yeah, well, so in 2019, I would say that I was idealistic and hopeful, and idealistic and hopeful that we could solve this problem with a vote, or solve the problems in Canada and indeed further the West by voting our way out of it, by being educated, educating other people, and voting our way out of it. And I was watching Trump operate. I was watching everybody try and counter Trump. I thought that Trump was going to get another term, because usually presidents who have a successful first term get a second term, especially in the modern era, like from Clinton to George Bush to Obama, right? You've got 3 back-to-back presidents, 2 terms. It makes sense that he would get another term. And so 2 weeks before the election, I was like, shit, he's not going to win. And he knows he's not going to win. And he's thwarting people from stopping it from happening. Does that make sense? So like there were a whole bunch of people who were saying the Hunter Biden laptop thing's real. We need to get President Trump to blah, 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 all this stuff. And it was a very, like Laura Loomer, all these really, really big hitter conservative people that Trump definitely watches. Like he absolutely knew what was going on, because I knew, right? If I know, Trump knows, and Trump's discounted half of the crap that I think is important. Anyway, regardless of all that, if I knew, Trump knew. And I thought to myself, holy shit, he's going to lose. He's going to lose, but he shouldn't lose. Why is he going to lose? And then obviously I started looking at the mail-in ballots, at the COVID response of, this is, it's important to do for COVID. And the mail-in ballots were obviously fraudulent. People were stuffing ballots. They were going door to door, and there's footage. There's all sorts of footage of all sorts of election fraud going on in the United States, state by state, crossing state lines, people doing similar things, stealing the election. Democrats closing up the counting rooms, the 3:30 in the morning injection of Biden thing, Biden votes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The 2020, it broke yesterday. The 2020 Chinese printing of what's it called? Ballots, right? So they printed fake ballots in a huge amount, all for Biden. And so all of this happened, and I watched all of this happen. And then afterwards, Biden got inaugurated. The United States dealt with it. Didn't do a damn thing. Didn't do anything. And so I learned 2 things in the 2020 election. 1, the elections are rigged. And 2, a population like the United States that is heavily, heavily, heavily armed will accept a fully rigged election. So what do you think Canada will do? Accept a fully rigged election. And our elections were rigged in 2019, rigged in 2015, rigged in 2021, and rigged in 2025. Every single one. Everyone. And I know that with 100% certainty, 100%, because all of the elections are rigged across the West. We collectively as a society would not vote for what's happened over the past 30 years, 1990 to now, but even broader since 1950. If you compare somebody from 1950 in Canada, a Torontonian from 1950 to a 2025 Torontonian, they would be unrecognizable to each other completely, 100% completely unrecognizable. We wouldn't vote for this. We wouldn't vote for what's happened. We've been attacked, and we've been an owned society for a very long time, like longer than even the scope that I'm talking about. But that's a little. But it boils down to that's a little beyond the scope of our conversation today. But it boils down to that we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this because nobody in the West can vote their way out of this. Trump might be a wild card. I don't know. Trump represents maybe something that can change our path, but also maybe not. I'm not sure. The jury's still out because the fog of war on Trump is very thick right now. So I'm not sure.
I would say Trump and Putin, they're the wild cards right now.
Yeah.
Like they're the only, people might get pissed off at me saying this, but they're the only sane, rational, reasonable people that I see.
Yes. I don't know what, yeah, BC, Gary, the BC election is exactly the same. And there's a guy, remanded who's digging into this. He's got all the proof up and down. Like the whole BC election was absolutely fraudulent. Rustad should never, ever, ever have conceded that rigged election. And the fact that he did should invalidate him as party leader. And that conservative party should have revolted the second he conceded and replaced him as leader. And so that conceding didn't happen, and I don't know what the F, but they're all in on it. They're all in on it. If they allow him to do that, they're all in on it. But yes, absolutely 100%.
What about Dallas Brody? What are your thoughts on her and one BC party?
I've seen it successful with UCP. So like I talk about this sometimes as well because Ontario is not, I'm from Ontario, and Ontario is not very good at, we elect conservatives and we elect liberals, and that's it. If you have a third party, the NDP got elected once in 95 and it was a nightmare. My dad lost his mind. He hated Ray Days. Oh my gosh, my dad hated Ray Days. But, and he, every day he's like, never vote NDP during the 90s. So Ontario does not vote for other parties. And I don't know why, because it's clear to me that both the Liberal and the Conservative Party are uniparty people who don't work for Ontarians at all. And so I watched the rise of the Wild Rose. I watched Danielle Smith cross the floor to prevent the Wild Rose from coming to fruition, which that was confusing as all hell. And then watched the rise of the UCP and then Jason Kenney's game, because Jason Kenney's a Liberal. And then he was replaced by Danielle Smith. And so I hope, it's my opinion that all of these other parties, Danielle Smith not allowing the Wild Rose to come to fruition, Danielle Smith taking over for Kenney, I feel like if there's a hero, we will provide the hero, right? So that's the globalists talking. And so I think Smith is maybe a provided hero, but there are some times when she does things that are great, and other times where she does things that aren't great. Arthur Pawlowski, the Coots 4, all of the judicial stuff, terrible. Absolutely. She campaigned on fixing that and she completely ignored it. And I think, like, what's your game, Danielle Smith? So I don't know if a political party that's made up of people who genuinely want to fix things can actually manifest. I don't know if they'd let that happen, because it seems like anybody who wants to solve the problem, they smash those connections very fast. They don't let people connect together and make something that could go viral, or make something that could. That's why the trucker convoy scared the shit out of them, because it was out of their control. And so they would smash all of the things that would make.
Who's they?
Well, the people who put Carney in, the people who are currently rigging the 2020 election, or who rigged the 2020 election, who rigged our election, who rigged the BC election. These people have control of our countries. We pay 60% of our earned production. So we earn a whole bunch of stuff. 60% of that goes to these elites. They have a lot of power over us, but they don't want to be the face of the power. And so they're 2 or 3 steps back. They run it like a mafia. So, I mean, I could tell you, but I don't know that your audience would tolerate that. It's a little bit, again, beyond the scope of today's podcast.
Are we talking about like the Laurentian elites, the billionaires in Ontario, or are we talking about the international bankers, City of London?
A little bit of, yeah, City of London, the 3 cities. Yeah. I think that there is certainly an argument that could be made about that. But again, they run it like a mafia. So like, I think there are, when you step back, there are a couple of different layers, again, just like a mafia family. And so like, at the top layer, there are these 12 families, and you've heard the names before: Rothschild, Bronfmans, all these, elite families, like, top tier, used to be kings and queens, probably related to the Roman Empire and all the rest of it, right? History just going back all as far as you can imagine. People so rich that they knew about 9/11 and they got out of the building beforehand, right? Like, those are the people that I'm talking about. And then they own companies and they have CEOs. the rumor is that there's about 300 people who are in the second tier. So the first tier is those 12 families and their related relations. And the second tier is a group of about 300 people who are running things. And then the next tier is our politicians and all of the hangers on at Bilderberg and G7s and all the rest, right? Carney is a high-level capo. He was the Bank of Canada guy. He was the Bank of England guy. Now he's the Prime Minister guy. So he's a fixer. He's a guy who goes into like, I'm super smart, Mr. Carney, but he doesn't sound smart. How many times does he say in a 5-minute period? How many times have I said it? And he gets worse when he's on, when he's not nervous, practiced. Yeah, way worse. I just have a style. I just can't think of words sometimes. That's what happens to me. But he says unendingly. It's unbelievable. So Carney is a fixer. Trudeau's an actor. The Macron. What's with Macron's wife? What's with all their wives? Holy smokeronies.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I shouldn't go there, but some of them are. It's questionable. Maybe it's the ravages of time.
I don't know. I don't think time doesn't give you a strong chin like that.
I don't know.
If you've got a cleft chin, that's a little weird. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm just some dude in my garage, and I look at things and I'm like, this is weird. And I don't claim to have all the answers, but I have looked, and I know, like, I've looked for answers, and I know what people say, right? And so maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know, but what we're being told is 100% not true, not accurate, not the truth. How's that?
They always say, like, politicians, they're just in it for the money, they're in it for the pension. And I always thought that was an exaggeration until I saw the Liberal Party candidate in my riding. Zero conscience, like whatever. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the Liberal Party would give him a post-it note. They're like, these are the day's talking points. And he'd say, Donald Trump is threatening our sovereignty. I support Mark Carney. He's the only one that can get us through this. And I'm like, I asked him, I'm like, your party just destroyed the country for 10 years. And I said, Jody Wilson-Raybould, Commissioner Lucky, the Emergency Measures Act. How can you support this party in good conscience? And he still supports the party.
Because they're in a cult, and the party represents power. The party represents money, endless money. Frank, what's his name? Frank Bayless. He got a huge $250 million contract for during COVID, right? I think he was even still an MP at the time. I think it was before the 21 election. He didn't win in 21, but he got $250 million bucks for ventilators that the Canadian government paid for that didn't pass, that weren't the standard. They didn't pass the standard. They couldn't be used. So they got put to scrap, sold for scrap. That's it. And it's cronyism. So, like, we may not understand why they blindly just follow, but maybe he had some reason,
No. What I'm saying is he knows, like, he has no conscience,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, if the government's giving me $250 million, I have a conscience. I'm going to think, what is Mark going to think of me if this gets out? I'm afraid. But these people, like,
they don't care.
Canadian people don't know how corrupt this government is, this entire system.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. If something comes out, and Bayless things came out, and he didn't care, like, he ran for leader of the Liberal Party. So things came out, and you're right, he didn't care, but they think they're entitled to all this. They think that this is, they're our betters. They're the Laurentian class, the elites. They've been pumped up to feel that way too. Like, they've been told that, you're right. You're like, imagine a lot of people, I think, imagine still, I don't know that Stephen Harper's a good example. Jean Chrétien, like the happy kind of Canadian and hapless, and we're managing our economy, but don't worry about it too much. And so they think of a very benign view of the government, right? And so, like, when I put a benign view of the government, it's got Jean Chrétien's face on it. But I think that that's false. Our government are vicious and evil, and they're very, very targeted. And so, like, the reality is, it's a communist government. It's dictatorship. We are in a situation where, and like, the phrase is, you can vote yourselves into communism, but you can't vote yourselves out, right? So we're sliding in right now, and, like, stopping it is very difficult, because on one hand, people don't see it because they've got this Jean Chrétien face on the government that they remember, or that they think they remember, right? And the way the government acts is not that way anymore. And I mean, even Chrétien there was an article in a 1997 Time magazine that said Canada, the happy dictatorship, right? Talking about the Quebec crisis and a whole bunch of the things that were going on then. So even then, our system of governance was set up to kind of trend that way. But now we're in a situation where I think that the government was like, well, why not? Why not just go all the way? And the reason that they say that is not because I think that the people at the level where they would say that, the House of Commons and things like that, would believe that they're doing what's right in the face of people who don't know enough, so they do wrong. Like that Mark guy doesn't understand that we don't have enough people coming in, so our economy would crash. And if we did Mark's plan, the economy would crash. So in order to maintain the economy, we have to keep bringing people in. That's that. So Mark's wrong and I'm right. And in order to maintain the economy, so Mark can keep eating, we'll ignore Mark, we'll call him an alt-right whatever, we'll silence him, and we'll continue doing what we're doing to make sure the economy doesn't fall. But my plan would not be to turn off the immigration right away, because I do understand that we're in a situation. Do you play snooker? We're snookered. We're screwed. And we've been screwed by the policies, and they've done it on purpose so that when you try and fix it, your economy crashes. Right? So like if I walked in and said, I'm going to turn this off, the economy crashes because we rely on all of that money that comes in.
I think what you're describing is like a Ponzi scheme. There is no way out. Like you've dug yourself into a hole.
And so that's why all the governments come in and say, we're going to grow into this, because they know we're going to be bringing in 1 million people a year. And so rather than fixing the structural problems, they just say, we're going to hold off on certain things and we're going to grow the economy into that, instead of fixing the problem and bringing things down. But yes, it's a Ponzi scheme.
This policy of bringing immigrants in, is that sustainable? I mean, they've resorted to bringing in cheap labor now.
What do you mean by sustainable? What do you mean by sustainable?
Well, when they were bringing in rich immigrants, it kind of made sense because the country doesn't have money. You bring rich people in. But now they're just bringing in poor immigrants to work at Tim Hortons. At some point, people won't have money to buy donuts.
So the plan is to drop our standard of living to the level of the people that we're importing. Okay, so they want to drop us down from expecting to have a family home that's 1,200 square feet, that's not connected to any other houses, that has a backyard and maybe a garage, to being stacked in condos, right? Having no backyard, having nothing that resembles a Western way of life. And so like when you say is what they're doing sustainable, my explanation to you is they view the Western way of life as unsustainable. And so they are making us into an Eastern shithole, slum. You understand? That's why they want to reduce. They don't want it to be sustainable. They want us overwhelmed. They don't want us around anymore. They don't even want us to remember that we had democracy in the first place. That's the play. They're just going to keep doing this until we stop asking.
I have a theory. Tell me what you think about this. They want to financialize everything. So they want to take all the industry and they want to push it to the global south, and they want the West to be the bank. And then they just figure out a way to deal with the peasants on the land that are still here, which is probably UBI.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's basically what it is. They're not looking really at exporting industry. The whole purpose is basically to bankrupt us. Like if you look at the United States, it's a little more obvious because their orders of magnitude are just so much bigger than ours. So like with us, a bad day is $100 million to arrive can. Right. And that is a bad day. I'm not saying it's not, but in the United States, they're spending how much on Medicaid? You know what I mean? Like they've trimmed $900 billion, $1 trillion, something like that. They've trimmed an unbelievable amount of money. And I mean, I don't know if they're going to be enshrining those into law or anything like those cuts into law or anything like that. But the United States has been washing the money. Julian Assange was the guy who said, listen, the point isn't a successful war. The point is to wash the tax money out of the United States and send it to global elites. And that's what they're doing. So like, they don't care about production. They care that they can have their food. They care that they can be fed. They care that they can be secure. And that's it. And I'm talking the Davos elite guys and above, right? That's the class that they're looking at. That's what they care about. And the rest of it, they don't give a shit. We could starve. We could die. They don't care. They want our country. Like they want Canada's very rich, right? Canada's got softwood, oil, all the rest of it, and they want the country, and they don't want to go through a war, a shooting war with the West, because going in, attacking Canada directly triggers a whole bunch of all sorts of treaties and things like that. People will come to our aid to help us. But if we're just invaded silently over 30 years, they take the country, and then a whole bunch of mosques get built, and maybe Alberta is taken by the Middle East, maybe Ontario is taken by some other place, the United States. Who knows where it all goes? But fundamentally, we are removed from the land without firing a shot, and they get to inherit it, and then it can be called whatever the hell they want it to be called. Alberta can be new Saudi Arabia, and they can make deals with the United States and climate change. Who cares about climate change? We lost. You understand? Everything that we care about, gone. Doesn't matter. They don't care. Why would they care? Because it's fake climate change.
I'm going to go back. I want to stick on this topic, but I promised Kakar Ram I would ask a question.
I think it was the BC. I think it was the BC election, and
here we go. I'd be curious to learn Mark's opinion on the Crown and the status of Canadians as serfs rather than as citizens. And I know that the question he's going to be really asking is, what is your view on taking an oath to the Crown and the Privy Council as well?
Oh yeah, no. Any politician who's taking an oath to a foreign government is not working for the citizens of this country. And yeah, there are. I think that they absolutely want to return us to serfs. I think that even when you look back at the beginning and the founding of Canada, it wasn't until relatively recently that the government actually worked for citizens, or that people believed that the government worked for citizens. The government worked for the corporations that hired them to settle Canada. Like Guelph was settled by John Galt, the guy who he didn't really work for Guelphites. He worked for the Crown Corporation that sent him to Canada. You know what I'm saying? And so like the government used to just work for the people who sent them to Canada. And then there was a change, and I think it's like 1890, something like that, 1870, 1890, something like that. When was Canada created? I can't remember now. 1867. Yeah. So like it was before the 1900s. And up to that point, it was just governments and government, just the government workers, I guess, and the corporations above them who were running things and making decisions. And then there was a change, and it was supposed to be the citizens running things. But again, all of our paperwork that outlines the creation of Canada and all the rest of it, there's some questions around that. They're like, the man on the land guys and stuff. So yeah, I think that there are, I think our politicians generally, and by the paperwork, don't work for us, right? Sheila, there's a woman, and she's in Guelph. She ran for mayor of Guelph in the last mayoral election. But she is very upset, and rightfully so, that a lot of the mayors no longer take oaths to their citizens. It's like the oaths are to different things, but it's not to the citizens. And the local governance has been usurped as well. You know what I'm saying? Like all levels of our government have been usurped, not just the federal with the taking an oath to the Crown, but even the municipal level has been usurped. And now I don't know who exactly they swear an oath to, but it's not to the citizens. It's not to the people who elected them.
Follow-up question. I know Kakar Ram. How important is this oath? Like if you got in, and is it just you're going through the motions, or is it a psychological effect? Like what is it? What does it matter if you're swearing an oath to the Crown?
You don't. Sorry, what Kakar Ram said there, I agree with him. Like at the end there, at the bottom, I agree fully. I just wanted to give an example of somebody who's pushing back and saying that these people aren't swearing oaths to the citizens. But if you don't swear an oath to the citizen, to the group of people that you work for directly, then, and I mean, like a regular job is, you don't necessarily have to swear an oath to become a daycare worker or something like that. You know what I mean? But when you are being elected by a group of people to run the city in good faith, and you swear an oath to a foreign crown, or you swear an oath to a group of people who are climate change zealots or something like that, instead of swearing it to the people who live and work in the community, well, then maybe you're going to start reducing all the speed limits to 40 kilometers an hour and then 20 kilometers an hour. And then maybe you're going to bring in the 2030 agenda over people who complain about it. Maybe you're going to spend taxpayer monies not on pothole fixing, but instead on hotels for illegals, and then taxis to the free drug place, which is what was happening in Guelph. I think it still is happening in Guelph. They put them up in the hotel in the Super 8, and then every day, twice a day, taxis show up and they drive them to the safe injection site to get them their drugs. And then it would be cheaper to just send the drugs in the taxi, right? But anyway, they taxi them down and they taxi them back to the hotel. So crazy. And that's not even to mention the illegals they put up in hotels. Have you been to Niagara Falls? Niagara Falls is a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. Unbelievable stuff. It's like walking around in a Middle Eastern country, or sometimes China. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. I can't even. I went to college there, like in Welland. So we used to go to Niagara Falls to go clubbing, and we used to go to Niagara Falls to go to the casino, and it's a totally different place now.
You and I mentioned something to you before. It's very difficult to talk to people about this, like ordinary Canadians, especially the baby boomer generation.
Yep.
You talk to them about the problems. They agree with it. You ask, I'm PPC, but you ask them if they're going to vote conservative, and they say, no, I don't, Pierre Poilievre is too negative. So it's complete brainwashing by the media.
Yep. Yeah. But even the CPC, even the Conservatives are uniparty. You know what I mean? Like the Conservatives are pushing, when Poilievre was putting out his platform, a lot of the things that he was saying were the same as Mark Carney. So I was like, this is weird. Why are they the same? Why are they pushing at the same policies? It's very, very weird. So, and I mean, again, most people, I think part of the structure of our society is you're so busy, you can't be up to date and informed on the things that are going on. So here's an example. It's the end of June. Right now is June 17. And on June 20th, which is this Friday, the Upper Grand District School Board is having an in-service at 7 p.m. for human rights. Okay. They want to talk about human rights and human rights violations. And it's supposed to be independent, but it's a deputy minister of education who's running it. So I emailed them and I was like, how is this guy independent? He's a deputy minister of education. He's not independent. Like, what are you talking about? He's anything but independent. He's an insider. Anyway, I digress. So it is scheduled for 7 o'clock on a Friday night, June 20th. I was like, hi. And they only gave us a notification today. And the first one was yesterday. I just got this email today. I was like, what are you doing, you lunatics? So they do this stuff so they can say, look, we asked the public. And no, we didn't. No, it's insane. And they're putting on this show, and then they say, well, you didn't engage. We tried to tell you, and only 3 people showed up and they were all supportive. And it's like, well, nobody looked at the email. Nobody saw that. Nobody knew it was happening. I was in Upper Grand District School Board school the other week, and they had an image. It's up on my Twitter if you're interested to look. But they had a picture on, or a sign up in front of the girls' washroom that said, it had a handicapped sign on it. So like a person in a wheelchair. And then it said, this is the girls' washroom. This washroom is for anybody who is a girl or identifies as a girl. And I was like, what the hell? How does that happen in a high school? How are you allowing teenage boys access? And so like, if I'm going to bring this up, first of all, this insider guy who's running this independent human rights thing is going to see it's the human rights of these boys to have access to that girl's place. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, no, they don't. They don't. And why would you subject this situation to kids? This is against human rights. This is insane. But he's going to sit there and, well, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of, this hasn't happened yet, but on Friday when I go to question these guys, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of write-up about how mean I was.
This is, I deal with a lot of liberals, like in my circle of friends and family, and you talk to them and they point out all the problems. My daughter was at school. They harassed her. They went into her bathroom. It was wrong. Yep. But if you flip it around and you say to them, like, this is insane. We should not be letting these transitioning males into women's bathrooms. They'll be like, why are you so mean? You're such a bigot. It's
not
like
even bigoted. Thing. It's not even bigoted. Like it's not even a bigoted thing. It's not even a mean thing. right? Like it would be saying to somebody like, this bathroom is for people who are 5'8" and up. You know what I mean? And I mean height or whatever. If somebody is not that, then they can't go in there. And somebody's saying, I identify as that, blah, blah, blah. It's invalid. And yet these people, it's not mean. It's just saying that you don't meet this criteria. You're not this. No matter how much you want to be this, you're not. So sorry, you can't come in here, right? And it's not mean or bigoted to have those criteria, especially around sex, with regards to sensitive areas with bathrooms and things like that, especially when you have mentally ill men who will go in there and use their access to hurt women. It's insane. And so like, I understand what you're saying, but I have a hard time having compassion for people who can't see the reality of this situation for what it is, you know?
I think you understand where I'm coming from. Like, Canadians have been told you have to be terminally polite. You must
Yeah.
not hurt anybody else's feelings, right? And if you come in as a politician and you hurt someone's feelings, they'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to vote for that guy. He's a
Yep.
meanie."
Yep.
What we need is a
Yep.
nice guy with nice socks, fancy socks.
Yeah. Well, and who doesn't engage in any real conversation about anything that's going on that needs to be discussed. And it's really easy to be a nice guy when you don't talk about anything that matters, right? Like I'm a super nice guy if you want to talk about hot dogs, right? But why? Why are we talking about that? Like, who gives a shit about that, right? Let's talk about the things that matter. And I get frustrated when people want. So I'm kind of known for talking politics. So I get frustrated when people say, "Well, I don't talk politics, but I hate Donald Trump." I'm like, "Ooh, do you? Let's talk, eh? You hate talking politics." But then they say, "Oh, I hate talking politics," when you've absolutely eviscerated them on everything, right? They're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to talk about politics anymore. Can't we find something else?" It's like, yeah, well, you lose, buddy. So yeah, I don't mind engaging them, and I don't mind not browbeating, but telling them in no uncertain terms that they're losing, and because their positions are crap. But they're all in a cult. And
Probably the only thing you accomplished is by forcing them to go further left.
yeah,
Like, smart
maybe.
guy.
Maybe so like in 2015, I woke up for Pizzagate. Actually, I worked with children. I worked for 15 years. I worked in children's mental health and family and children's services. And so I've seen firsthand some pretty terrible things. And so when Pizzagate happened, I was like, holy shit, people should be going to jail. I was like, wow, because I'd seen it. Okay. And so when it happened on my Instagram feed, those are two worlds that usually did not collide. And I was like,
Excuse me.
holy shit.
What happened? PTA?
Pizzagate. Sorry, Pizzagate?
Pizzagate. Sorry.
Pizzagate. Yeah.
Can you
Those
explain for the audience? I don't even remember it too clearly.
So Pizzagate was a thing that broke during the 2015-16 presidential cycle. Hillary Clinton was encapsulated in Alephantis. What's his name? I can't remember his first name, but he owns Ping Pong Pizza, which is a very elite place where a lot of Washington people used to go. And he had an Instagram feed that basically highlighted horrific abuse of children. And since then, they debunked Pizzagate, but the same way they debunked everything else, like it's not really a debunk. So I woke up during Pizzagate, and then that was just before Hillary Clinton lost the presidential election. Pizzagate led to me looking at Donald Trump in a way that was different than most people looked at him. And I was like, well, he seems rational and normal. Like, why is everybody so mad? And all of my friends were like, whoa, dude. So when all of my friends said, like, basically you can have Donald Trump or us, and I was like, see you guys later. I realized that, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, friends for 20 years, and they're like, you can't like Trump. He's going to jail. I'm like, he's not. No, he's not. I was like, please enter reality. Like, this is not real. This manufactured bullshit is not reality. And I mean, I don't talk to them at all anymore. I have different friends now because that's how life works, I guess. But they've gone through the past 10 years believing, like, just angry, but believing Donald Trump's this, terrible guy, blah, blah, all the stuff that's actually happening, being done to us by our government. They believe Donald Trump is this terrible, awful guy doing that to the Americans, and we should be upset about it. And I can't believe they can't see how crazy all this is. And like and I mean, again, 2015 Donald Trump is different than 2025 Donald Trump. I think the rhetoric is different. There's differences that are meaningful. But at the same time, I couldn't imagine being that out of touch with reality, and like being contented to be angry at whoever the TV tells me I'm angry at, right? I want to solve a problem and they want to censor me. I have questions and they want to censor me. That doesn't bother people. It's weird. It's so weird.
I went through the exact same thing. So I my sort of awakening was during the Kavanaugh trials. I was like,
Yeah,
this
this is
is
crazy.
really weird. Like that woman
Yeah.
is clearly lying about something. Like,
Yeah, about everything.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then, but you know, that it wasn't that. It was the 2020 election, and it was completely stolen. I remember the day after the election, I had to go to the Middle East, and the country I was going to, they something happened there, and they locked down everything. Like there was no information, no internet, nothing. Everything was censored. So for 1 month, I was there, and I was like, surely everything's going to get overturned. It's clearly stolen. The Supreme Court will do the right thing,
Yeah.
and you know, you'll get peace on earth. I come back, I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And I said the same thing to my friends, and I basically I lost all my friends, and I walked away. I'm like, this is just, I don't even want to wait for them to tell me to F off.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's basically what I went out. We used to do a Christmas thing, and we went to the Christmas thing, and I like to debate. I like a good debate. If I'm wrong, I like to find out I'm wrong. I like a good debate, you know, like let's really get into it. So me and a buddy of mine got into the debate, and his position was the United States needs, and previously we'd debate and then end up kind of like, you know, agreeing to disagree or whatever at the end. But his position was the United States needs, this is in 2015 again, the United States needs to give free healthcare to their entire population. And I said, well, that'd be nice, but you have to have a closed border for free healthcare to make any kind of sense, because otherwise you would just incentivize like the whole world to come to your free healthcare party, right? And he's like, well, that's very, you know, the 2015 equivalent of that's very racist. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, that's not racist. That's economics. That's like straight up economic. You're incentivizing this behavior. No consequences. Come here. You can get all your teeth fixed. You can get your health care. You can transition to a man if you want to. Come on over. Like, and he was so mad at me. And I was like, because I was just laughing at him. I was like, dude, you are clearly not rational if you can't understand financial incentives like that. Like, I'm not even going to argue with you because it's so funny. And he was so mad. I was like, okay, buddy. And he's like, no, they should, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you didn't.
You have way more energy than I do. I just, whenever someone says, you know, we want free healthcare, I'm like, get rid of the immigration, I'll give you free healthcare. Or alternatively, you want open borders immigration, get rid of the entitlements.
Yeah, get rid of everything. Oh man, I want to get rid of the government. Can't deliver anything. The government is terrible at delivering. If you had me running a hospital, just me, okay, just me, and I get to hire people, and I have a hospital, right? Like I get to hire House, and I get to hire Trapper John and all the people who are supposed to be in the hospital. Like I'm not the doctor and the administrator. I get to hire people. But if I had a hospital and then the government had a hospital, which hospital do you think would be better?
Yours. I mean, logically.
100%. There is no question in my mind. And not because I know that I'm a competent person, right? Because I would put a competent person in charge of my hospital, and then I'd go down and hang out and, you know, like drink Mai Tais by my pool because I run a hospital and that's obviously lots of money, and I run it well, right? But the government does not. They take kickbacks. They do things that you and I would never do when running a business and should never do. They are not to be trusted. And I can't believe that we're just Canada pays $9,000 per person. And I think it's probably more than that now. $9,000 per person for healthcare. Our free healthcare is $9,000 per person. In the United States, you can get a plan for much less per year, much less than that. That's a platinum friggin' plan if you're paying that much money.
But you can't talk healthcare to Canadians. Like healthcare has now been embedded into the culture of Canada. It's healthcare and it's no access to guns. Like those are the two things that if you take those things away, Canada would just disappear as a country. It's the only identity we have left.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But we would have much better healthcare if we privatized it, and like we should privatize it. We should have opt-out. If I was the premier, oh man, if I was the premier, it would be so much fun. We'd have opt-out everything. If you opt out of education, you get all the money that is allocated. So the goal would be to have taxes as small, as limited as possible, and services as robust as possible that people want, but cut the services that people don't use. So we get rid of the human rights tribunals, we get rid of all the crap. And then as people opt out, right? So you have like a 2-year opt out. So as soon as you opt out, you don't get access to that taxpayer supported thing anymore. You get the money instead. Your money. That's fine. Boom. And now you can take that money and use it in the free market wherever you want. So you can, if you have,
I disagree with you. I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
an opt out. I would make it an opt in. Like,
Yeah. Great. Love it. Yeah, that's
don't take
perfect.
my money to begin with.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Opt into the things you want, and then buy the things you don't. Right. And so after a year of running the opt-ins, you can clearly see where the hotspots are, what people really want, what people don't. Right. What's opted in, what's not, and then you get rid of the things that aren't, and then you double down on the things that are. You
Could you imagine how great that
those.
would be? Like, they would go door to door, be like, "Hello, we're from the government of Canada. Would you like to opt into the carbon tax program?"
No, I wouldn't pay people to do that. Are you kidding me? If you want to opt in, man, you've got to educate yourself and get involved, and then opt in on your little avatar or whatever it is. So yeah, no, it's and I'm not advocating for a digital ID. It would be like you log in, you have a login, it sends it to your email. There's no digital ID or anything like that, and it would be illegal. And the other thing I want to do is I would have I would create a tax system within Ontario. If I was the Premier of Ontario, tax system in Ontario, CRA or whatever it is. And I would intake all the taxes. I wouldn't let the federal government remit taxes or collect taxes in Ontario. It would all go through my tax agency, and I would not remit a single dollar to a federal government that is not proven to me, and by extension the rest of Ontario, that they're not run by a foreign entity like China. And the second that I think that they're run by a foreign entity, I'll stop remitting taxes. And the second that I stop remitting taxes, then you get a refund.
Your argument, your plan only works if you yourself are not controlled by China.
Indeed. But there should be a check and balance. There should be a check and balance. There should be a way to ensure independence and recalls. You know what I mean? Like there should be a way to say, we don't think that you're legit, Mark, as the premier of the province, as the person who's running everything. We don't think you're legit, and we want assurances. We want this. We want to recall you. Yeah, I agree.
We used to have really good, effective recall in Canada back in the day, where if the mayor didn't deliver, they'd go after him with pitchforks.
Yeah. If we devolve to that level, then the federal guys lose control. The people who have control now lose control. They want us within a specific band. Like they want us to have phones, and they want us to have electric cars or transit. They want us like right here in the band. And if we lose technology to the degree of losing phones, then they lose control, because they can't do digital IDs with no phones.
The phone thing really dumbs people down too. Like my attention span is not what it was 25 years ago.
It's true. I've learned French, and I'm learning piano, and so there are benefits to your phone. I don't play Candy Crush. I don't play any games on my phone. Like I don't ever. It's a work tool for me. But I'm as addicted as everybody else is to the phone. I notice it, and I'm like, man, I wish there was another way to do this. I like the phone, and I like using it as a tool. But I agree with you. There are huge problems with attention and with the ability to focus on something. Trying to read a book, but also the books are kind of crap. Like, a lot of the books are ideological. A lot of the books are pushing crap ideas. A lot of the books are not very well crafted. Well-crafted books are rare. Like Harry Potter was a pretty well done story, but there's two distinct trilogies within that. But J.K. Rowling's a pretty good writer, but it's not consistent because books she's written after that don't hold. So I don't know if it's the writer or what, or if it's like, I don't know. But I think that there's not necessarily something different about the books. But I remember being enthralled by books when I was in the 90s. Like I would read. So like I worked in a children's mental health place, 99 to 2002, 2003 maybe. And I read constantly because we were like, I had overnight shifts, and there were times when you had to be in classrooms and stuff, and there just wasn't anything to do. Kids were working, and it's like, well, okay, I'm just being here is my job. I'm going to read a book. So I would read a book. And like Ender's Game. There's a whole bunch that I read through in the 90s that were just fantastic. I never liked The Lord of the Rings because I thought it was a little too wordy, but C.S. Lewis was better. But all of that is to say that the books now they feel like something's missing, and I don't feel like they're talking. I feel like they're trying to take me away from reality, when what I want is to learn about where we are, this reality here. And what we're told is hinky if you start to look. And so I'm interested in that, but I'm not interested in a lot of the fiction that's coming out, because a lot of the fiction is just it's bullshit ideological nonsense. It's garbage. It is garbage, right? And it's also focused on like the end of the world, Hunger Games, all this stuff, and people really liked it. But there's something about it that I'm like, man, have you read what's it called? It's a book. No, we'll talk about it off air. But yeah, I'm
Jackie Collins is the bitch.
It's a book about the moon. No, it's a book about being visited by aliens and humanity, the aliens looking like the devil and them stealing all of humanity's children. And it's like, I can't remember the name. I described it on my show, and one of the people who was watching like right away knew it, and they were like, "Oh, it's a very big sci-fi book from like the 1950s, 60s era when the moon was coming in." Anyway, it's one of those things where sometimes they communicate their plans in fiction, and are long-standing, and so this is one of those books that it's like, are they communicating here or what? So I'll know it when I can Google it, but I just don't have the time to Google it while we're talking.
Is it Childhood's End?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you. That's it. That's the one.
I think you Googled it.
Yeah, good. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. But it's, that's the one. And again, this is the Pied Piper, this trope of stealing the children. We're having our kids stolen right now. The Pied Piper is taking our kids with gender ideology, right? The kids are being, there's The Greatest Showman, the Greatest Showman, that movie.
Yeah.
It's from 2020. So like it's a whole musical talking about like the world you're going to build, like this we're going to build this world together. They want to destroy what's here now, and they're going to build this thing in the future. They're Pied Pipering our kids right now. That's what's going on.
Related to that, what's your view with compulsory education laws?
In England, they have compulsory education laws. I think it's probably a terrible idea. I would pull my kids the second that my kids said, I don't want to.
I'm pretty sure we have it in Canada, and we had it from Egerton Ryerson's era.
Yeah, there are. So in England, it's a lot worse with regard to making kids go to school. So if you pull your kids in Canada, you can just tell the government that you're going to homeschool them, and that's pretty much it. That's the end of it, right? But it's much more difficult to do that. And I don't even know if it is legal to pull your kids from school in the United Kingdom. Even if they miss 3 days in a week, you get fined. Like I have cousins in England, and they came over Christmas, and they came like over Christmas, like the actual Christmas Day type deal. They were in New York City. And I was like, why are you in New York City? And they said, because if we didn't go during the school break, we can't go otherwise. We can't go unless we're during the school break. And I said, just write them a letter saying, hey, we're going to be in New York City. What are you talking about? And they said, no, it's illegal. We'll get fined. And I was like, that sounds crazy. So
doesn't that bother you? Like, I find it really strange. I was born in Iran, and in Iran you had the understanding there were more few agricultural. The children belong to the parents. Yeah. You come here, and the state is telling you what you must do with your kids.
Yeah, well, people think that the Family and Children's Service there's a story in Canada that the Catholic Church and the government went in and stole residential kids, or stole First Nations kids and put them in the schools, right? Like that's kind of the story, the shorthand of the story. But the longhand of the story is that practice continues now, and it had nothing to do with Indigenous or not. They were saying these kids are not being parented the way we want them to be parented, and they're in danger of being, starving, or of being hungry, or of being harmed, or whatever. And they can define these things in creative ways. But I grew up in the foster system, and I know people, and I worked in the foster care system, children's mental health, from the early 2000s to 2015. And so I know firsthand people who had this state come up and take their children and take them for years. They never got them back until the children were adults and were able to reestablish the relationship with their parents. And so people think like, oh man, Catholic school's so terrible. You can't take people's kids away and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, they do now still. Not much has changed. It's the same thing. So I'm not even saying it's right, or, well, I'm not saying that the historical context is right necessarily, but I'm saying people don't understand what governments do. they do, like, these things happen all the time. So livestock management. Yeah. Accurate.
I think as a saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep.
When they brought this, they saw that there was a divide between like the rich families that had kids in it, the educated kids, and the poor that couldn't afford it. And from there, they're like, all right, we have to provide education for all.
Mhm.
And then the next logical step is all kids have to go to these schools. We want all kids to be educated. And then next thing you know, you're inching closer to Nazism and the Hitler's youth movement, where the kids are co-opted by the state.
Yep. Yeah, the balance is certainly hard to strike. It's just interesting to me that, and I think you're right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. In the 1929 stock market crash, that had a huge impact on First Nations' ability to sell their wares to the United States. So there was no demand at that point in time, and so when Truth and Reconciliation Day was going on, and I was talking about it, and I was skeptical as I am about things, people were messaging me and saying, "Listen, like." In 1929, when the stock market crashed, the Catholic schools went around, and the Catholic residential schools went around and basically said, "Do you want us to feed your kids? Do you want us to have your kids and feed them to make sure that they survive, et cetera, et cetera?" And a lot of people were like, "Yeah, we do, please," because they couldn't feed them. So, okay, like, it's one of those things where I mean, like, that's anecdotal. That's somebody sending that to me. I don't know that that's a widely known story or anything like that. I think it probably is, but those kind of situations where we interpret things that happen through a lens that assumes a whole lot, right, and doesn't give any credence to the reality of the situation, we don't do ourselves any service. Like, we don't do ourselves any favors. We're trying to relitigate things that happened 100 years ago, and we're absolutely failing. Our society is failing, and we're not doing a damn thing about that, and that's weird.
That also occurred to me. We are focusing on, Truth and Reconciliation from 150 years ago, whereas today people are dying because they're being denied treatment because of vaccination status.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so we're not doing anything to help our society now, and we're pearl clutching about a society that is long gone, and doesn't really have any impact on what's happening now, except that people are carrying a whole bunch of hurt feelings and dragging it into now through bad policies and all sorts of terrible things. My brother made the argument. I just realized it's already after 2, so we gotta wrap this up.
Okay, I was going to ask how we're doing for time.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell the audience how they can follow you, watch your show, your daily
Sure.
podcast?
Yeah. I do a daily podcast. It's now back on YouTube, so you can get the free version on YouTube if you're interested in doing the paid version. There's a paid version on Spotify, and you can check it out on my website and Locals. And there's a whole bunch of other places. Oh, Substack. That's the other one. And you can check it out if you're interested. And I honestly, genuinely just try and tell you what's happening as far as I can suss out. And if I'm skeptical about it, I'm skeptical about it. And I tell you that too. And I enjoy doing it. Like, I genuinely enjoy doing it every day. It's not a job to me or anything like that. People sometimes say, this is a job and blah, blah, blah. It's not a job. I do it as a hobby. I do it as something that is kind of a brain dump. And I'm incredulous. I just can't believe what's happening. Honestly, most days I'm like, wow, like, can you believe this one? And I honestly, genuinely can't. So I hope you come and join me, and hope to see you there. Thanks for having me on today, Payman.
Mark, thank you very much for coming on. Best of luck with your show, and hopefully we'll get you back on at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to come back on. And who was it? Kakar. He says he didn't Google the childhood Zen thing. So yeah,
lies.
I appreciate
he totally Googled it.
Very cool. Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No worries. Take care.